All right, we've talked about our questions now. Let's move on to narrowing down the list. So take that list and narrow it down to three. And we mentioned three here because a lot of people go with that, the old advice of get three estimates before you make a choice on a project. That way you might get a high estimate, you might get a low estimate, and an in-between estimate. And maybe you'll choose one of those three, but at least you have an idea of what the project is and what the contract is going to be about and what the contractor is going to be doing. So you might start to narrow it down between firms that are just too big and you don't have that personal attention, or they're too small, they just won't be able to take on the project and maybe not in the time frame that you're looking for. Plus, maybe the small guy just missed a bunch of items that you expected them to get or to understand, or maybe they just don't have the understanding of the project and they expect it to be simpler when you're talking to them. And then, do they need an architect on staff? Maybe that's one of the things that you'd like to have is, if you're working with an architect, are they okay with that? If you're working directly with a general contractor to get your project done, do they have an architect on staff? Maybe that's one of the questions where, well, they hire the contract or the architect as a subcontractor, but they don't have somebody consistent that they work with, or they won't even suggest an architect for me to work with. Maybe that's not a good thing. Maybe I cross them off the list for that. Also, when you ask them in the years of service, did they have any breaks? Did they, merge with somebody else? Did they buy somebody else out, or did they stop service, or did they lose their license for a period of time? Maybe that's a warning sign as well. Another thing is all this work being done by the subcontractors and the general contractor is just one man who shows up with the donuts for the subs, and just make sure that they're on schedule and on time? That might work out for you, and that might be perfectly fine, but what are you really getting out of that that general contractor? If something happens with one of these subcontractors, is he just going to hire a new subcontractor and then try to pass that cost on to you? Or does he have a few guys that can also do the work in-house for you? Also, is that general contractor concerned with your budget? If you say that you want, certain specialty items, and they say, oh yeah, sure, no problem, but they don't really ask about price or what that's going to be, maybe they don't know or haven't thought about that total cost for the project. So they might be a little bit whimsical about what your budget is, and they say, well, your project's pretty small by comparison with all my other clients. And that instantly should give you a notice that, hey, you're not going to give me the personal attention then. This project is small, yes, and I might have the same questions as a big project, and it might take more of your time, but the idea is you should be just as concerned with my budget and my smaller project or bigger project as the rest of your clients. Also, if you asked around, you might also get good reports or not so good reports on how a general contractor solved some problems that were on the site. Say there was nowhere to store materials and the drywall all got wet outside, or those kinds of things. How do they do, the problem solving? Did they just bring it inside and install it anyway? You don't really want that kind of solution. You want something that's going to be more along the lines of, well, we have a temporary storage that we had to move everything to because a hurricane came through. You want them to be the heroes whenever it comes to providing those problems or solutions to those problems that you're going to have. Alright, so once you start getting at and you get a good idea, you can narrow down that list down to the three that you really want to work with, and then you can really start spending more of your time on them as opposed to spending time trying to figure out who to work with and who not to. Now, they might not be the best three, so it's okay to have a backup, one or two or three extras to talk to as well, because maybe once you start talking to them, it doesn't work out and you need to replace one of those three with one of your other backups. Okay, so that's why you had that list, like a larger list of contractors that you put together.